If you're wondering what this video series is, it's probably a good idea to watch the first video, but if you don't want to watch it and you just want the TLDR version of it, I suck at fighting games, but I really enjoy the mystique of playing them and I want to become a fighting game player myself. So what do? I go through all of the most popular fighting games one by one to figure out which one I like the best and give them all a rating on my way. Oh, and also I give them a recommendation of whether or not I actually recommend them to you. And today is going to be a little bit interesting because today we're talking about Tekken is the big bad X of the fighting game world. Tough, inaccessible, aloof, alluring, hot as hell, and when she gives you the smallest compliment, you fall for her all over again. Tekken is a 3D fighter, and it's long held a reputation for being the hardest fighting game to get into, period. Because its skill floor, well, it's the ceiling for most other games. But I mean, it can't be all that bad, right? What's included in the game? Tekken does have some random offline modes for you to mess around with, such as an awful, cheesy, hilariously bad story mode that you can't make this up. Tekken Bowling, which for those of you who bought the DLC, I'm still waiting for it to go on sale. And an arcade mode to unlock costume pieces to dress your character and banners. And let me tell you, there is a lot of costume pieces. A lot. Oh, and there's also a suite of online modes. Speaking of, online play and my first impressions of the game.
Going online for the first time is brutal. Really brutal. You will not win a single fucking round.
But the poison will slowly creep into your veins, and you will find yourself sitting at 2 a.m. addicted to just one more match. What I learned: Tekken is complicated. Big surprise! I will do my best to simplify what I've learned to make it easier to understand what goes into a typical Tekken match, but buckle up, guys. This is a complicated one. Tekken is its own beast of a game, so far and away removed from 2D fighters where, in this game, movement is king, and its movement is tied into the infamous Korean backdash, which is used to backdash multiple times very, very quickly. I won't go too far into it, but if you want to practice it, practice dashing back once, holding down back, releasing all of your inputs, and then quickly pressing back once again, then to down back, and then repeat that motion like some kind of a Wing Chun practitioner. Seriously, it's going to take a long time to get the hand motion down, but once you get the hand motions down, it's not terrible. Whiff punishing is big in Tekken. So using a backdash, Korean backdashing, or doing up and down side steps depending on where your opponent's swing is coming from is super important to Tekken. Whiff punishing in Tekken is way more important than any other fighting game that I personally know of. To the point where knowing when and where to backdash and sidestep needs to become second nature to you if you want to win rounds. Not games, rounds. And speaking of rounds, there are a couple different ways to win a round in Tekken. You got poking, you got grappling, but the flashiest way to win a round is through juggling. Juggling is Tekken's combo system. Hit a foe with a launcher or with a counter hit, follow with a couple of other hits into another launcher, which will cause a corkscrew, which is when they do this little spinny thing. You'll hit them again a couple times, and then follow up with a big damage finisher. It's a simple, elegant system, which I quite like, because it emphasizes good timing over mashing out combos as fast as you can. You see, Tekken does have a button buffering system, but if you just sit there and you mash out a full combo in, 2 seconds, it's not going to come out. But if you properly time your combo to the cadence that your moves are hitting your opponent, that's when you're going to start seeing your moves land. Speaking of those other winning options though, you could just use pokes and hit your opponent with safe options. Again, watch the previous video in the series to go over frame data and all that kind of stuff, but safe just means that it's still your turn to push a button and you can't get poked away by it. The whole goal of winning by poking is to just slowly chip away at your opponent's HP bar and make your opponent respect your low game. Speaking of your lows in Tekken are a mixed bag because Most of them are pretty slow, they don't do a lot of damage, and if your opponent pushes down forward towards you, it will low parry you, which is actually a launcher. Now, it's not as damaging as a full launcher combo, but it still is extremely damaging. Now, there are variations to this, of course, because this is Tekken. Some characters do have lows that lead into launchers, which is absolutely terrifying. Because in Tekken, there are highs, mids, and lows. Highs and mids are usually the scariest. Again, some characters break these rules. You can duck highs, sidestep moves depending on which way you sidestep, and jump over lows. Ducking blocks lows, but not mids. Which, remember, mids are super scary because most launchers in the game are actually mids. So yeah, if your default setting is just to crouch block everything, you're gonna get hit a lot. Throws in Tekken are not as scary as other games because you can break them on reaction so long as you build a reflex to it. Because you can see which arm is leading on your opponent. I haven't gotten used to this yet, but it makes it easier to throw break because you push one button to break a throw coming from a left arm throw, you push another button to break a throw coming from a right arm throw, and you push both of them at the same time if they just reach out for a bear hug with both arms at the same time. This makes the mix-up game in Tekken more about mids and lows versus overheads, lows, and grabs in other games. Now, that may seem like Tekken is not as complicated as 2D games, but you have to factor in sidestepping, which is a huge part of Tekken that I am not used to yet. You can sidestep during certain strings on block in order to punish your opponent for just mashing a string. And if you successfully sidestep at the right time, you get a launcher and you get a full combo. Because of all of this information in the game, beginner online play at the low ranks is dominated by mashers. What else would you expect? People just try to mash out their combos and strings as fast as they possibly can to get a couple round wins. Which is fun. You know, I guess I'm not used to every character in the game, and I don't know all of the moves of every single character in the game, and I don't know how to deal with certain strings, and that's where the training mode is going to come in very handy, because you can set the bot to do different strings, but I haven't gotten into all of that yet. Don't come after me in the comments. I'm working on it. But at beginner play, there's a lot of mashing involved, and it's a knowledge check of do you know how to deal with mashing, which for the most part is just blocking and sidestepping at the right time, or backdashing. Intermediate level is when it starts to get a little bit more interesting in Tekken, because then you're going to see more movement-based gameplay, a lot more whiff punishing, getting your damage in after a successful counter hit, knowing how to capitalize on counter hits, because most of the time when I do a counter hit, I'm like, oh shit, counter hit. What do I do now? What do I do now? And then I panic and drop the combo. When you get a little bit above that, that's when movement becomes the deciding factor in most matches. Do you have better movement? Well, you're probably going to win the game. You have to outmaneuver your opponent in order to get free whiff punishes and get oh so much damage. Are you noticing something yet? Movement in Tekken is really important. Beyond that level, well, you're pretty much getting to pro level Tekken, which, oh man, let me tell you, pro Tekken is so much fun to watch. You could know nothing about Tekken and just be in awe of the spectacle of it. The movement, the feints within feints, the counter hit setups, the mind games they play with each other. It is an absolute joy to watch, especially with Tekken, because there are so many viable characters in Tekken. Like, most fighting games have pretty defined tier lists. In Tekken, there are so many pro players. Yes, granted, there's a lot of Akuma players, there's a lot of Kazuya players, a lot of Jin players, but there is so much character diversity in Tekken that you could have a top 8 and very easily not see another repeated character in that top 8. Just ignore when Leroy came out. That doesn't count. Shut up. I hear you in the comments right now. Sorry, got a little bit carried away there with that Pro Tekken rant. But if you have never watched Pro Tekken before, go look up some Pro Tekken matches. There is an absolute legendary match between JDCR and Knee that is one of the best fighting game sets ever played. It's so good. Pros and cons, rating, and do I recommend? The pros of Tekken 7 are this game is deep. really deep. It's much in the way of other complicated games like StarCraft, League of Legends, Dota 2. You have to put a lot of time into the game in order to even play it at a beginning level, which is going to scare a lot of people away. But for me, I kind of look at it as a pro, to be honest. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm just a masochist. I enjoy games that have a really high skill ceiling, and this game has a really high skill ceiling. Number 2, character diversity. Now, I know I said this in Mortal Kombat, but in Tekken 7, character diversity is everything. Like, the characters in this game are so wildly unique and just bizarre and interesting. My personal favorite character is Lei Wulong, who's basically Jackie Chan, which I grew up watching Jackie Chan. I love Jackie Chan. The problem is he's super complicated to play. So I've been playing Leroy Smith just to like understand the game, and then I'm eventually going to switch over to Lei. Yeah, I seem to have a talent for picking characters that people hate in fighting games. I don't know how. I really don't know how. Online mode? Not that bad. Like, honestly, netcode wise, this game's netcode, I've run into a couple of laggy matches, but for the most part, it's stable. And you can pick and choose who you want to play. And the best part is, you can avoid Wi-Fi warriors. Oh yeah. Cons. The game is complicated. There's no getting around it. I know I listed it as a pro. It's also a con. The game is complicated. I've talked about it enough. Con number 2. Unless you're looking for an online fighting game, there's not much else here. I mean, there's Tekken Bowling, which I've never played because I don't have the DLC, but I know some people enjoy Tekken Bowling because of just the sheer absurdity of it. There's not much here other than just pure online fighting game goodness, which for me is not that much of a big of a deal, but for some people, they're going to see it as a con. Other than that, there's not really too many other cons. The game is confusing, and it's mostly just online matches. Rating. Oh, Tekken 7. You've given me such a dilemma. I'm going to give this game a rating of 9 dysfunctional families out of 10. I like this game, and it's starting to become a drug. It's all I think about lately. It's just constantly in my brain. And the problem is, if you've never played a fighting game before, and you choose to start with Tekken 7, you're not jumping into the deep end of the pool. You're jumping into a small pool over a volcano filled with sharks from a satellite in orbit. You may not even hit the water. But the thing is, if you land in that water, let me tell you, it's gonna be a wild fucking story to tell, and you are gonna love every moment of it. So I will honestly keep playing Tekken 7 long after this video is done. It's a special, unique game that has this mystic feeling of community to it with everybody else in the Tekken 7 community that I cannot get enough of. I'm not sure if it's going to be my ultimate main go-to game yet. I still have some other fighting games to try, especially with Strive coming out here very shortly. Actually, by the time this video goes live, Strive will probably be out and I'll probably be playing it. But Tekken 7 absolutely has its barbs in me. And I would recommend this game to anybody that enjoys games that take a ton of skill and time to learn and play and to get into. Again, it's much in the same way of like League of Legends or Valorant, CSGO. Those games that have a ridiculously high skill floor, but also an insanely high skill ceiling. However, unlike those two games I just mentioned, Tekken 7 has the added benefit of not having to work alongside teammates, which is the ultimate best thing about fighting games. So overall, Tekken 7, I would recommend it, but you have to know what you're getting yourself into because otherwise you're going to get very discouraged. Don't worry about winning rounds at first, worry about landing a combo. Find little victories inside of your matches to get excited about, and I guarantee you, you will start getting addicted to this game. Tekken 7 is a wonderful, amazing game, and I can't get enough of it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Take care.